All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock practicing necromancer. And today I wanted to do a video on symbolism. Seems to be a lot of misinterpretations going around on social media about symbolism. Okay, representations of those symbolisms. The symbols such as hieroglyphs, um, runes, down to, say, for an example, the hidden languages. Even if you get into the fortune telling aspects of, say, for an example, discerning the nature or the omens of birds, animals, and what they represent. But a lot of times it comes down to symbols and that of spirits. And a lot of times people don't have the correct understanding because they did not build upon a firm foundation to even begin to grasp the lessons behind each one. Okay. So I thought I would give you a few examples, some references, and kind of give you the do's and don'ts, if you will. So I saw on TikTok there was a individual that put a clip out on how should I say this? Her Eldora Crow is the one that did this, and she's a well-renowned public socialite, if you will, from a practitioner's perspective. Got a lot of respect for her. She went under and was talking about the misinterpretations of what certain things represent, especially from a Hollywood perspective. Okay. Now, I'm going to bring up a few movies, TV series. Witches of East End, Witches and Warlocks, the perspective of them. The witches obviously died multiple lifetimes worth of agony to the point where the mother decides, I'm not going to train them in witchcraft. Well, guess what? Here we are. Um, they're adults, young adults, probably around 18 to 25. And Tatum's ex-wife actually was one of the actresses that played in this series. This type of series discerns how the children come across witchcraft and they begin learning how magical abilities, they come from a different alternative realm, if you will, different dimension, plane of existence, another entirely in different world. Okay. Now this particular TV series shows two families. One, the warlock's mother, who is targeting this other family. Okay. And they come from a family lineage of so called Satanists. Okay. Interesting how that works. But yet, this one person, this one girl, has a relationship with this one warlock. And it turns out their families were divided. So by the time you get to the end of season one, the warlock's mother was terminated. Basically, her life ended. And the son tried killing the other son, the other warlock son, and targeted the other family. Interesting how that goes, right? The so called witch wars. So now, in reality, you have so called witch wars that are associated with Aleister Crowley, um, Eliphas Levi, you have White, okay? And up until modern age, which is more popular these days, are the Harry Potter franchise. Where's the nearest gagging machine? Don't get me wrong, Emma Watson, magnificent lady, hell of an actress. Probably the only thing that kept that series going. But here it is, wizards against a necromancer. Another example of misinterpretations. The only point of a necromancer coming back to life, according to this, was to destroy Hogwarts and all magical systems and place them underneath his rule. Okay. If we go back into the late 80s, early 90s, we have the Warlock series. Okay, 1, 2, and 3, starring Julian Sands. Hell of an actor, old school, got mad respect for this man. It was really heartbreaking to hear that he died out in the wilderness. That sucked. So this particular series surrounds a warlock and a witch hunter, the original, okay, warlock movie. And what it is that this warlock is comes from hell, and basically, which actually transfers into the second and third one. And but the first one was unique because he was already in the realm of the living. Okay, already in the realm of the living, the human mundane world. So again, we see where the Christian views of these warlocks are viewed as evil. Now, I want to, at this point, I want to take the moment to clarify the etymology of the term warlock, the title. Modern Wiccans and pagans will place a title called warlock on you if you go outside their way of teaching. You betray the oath of that coven. This goes along with the Welsh and Anglo-Saxon terminology of warlock, which means liar, betrayer, okay, oath breaker. But yet, a lot of times when you see this, they don't go into things like the medicine man. They don't go into the shaman. They don't go into the mage, the warlock in itself, such as the hexa, which 25% of men were practicing witches. Okay, they were known as warlocks themselves. Okay, warlocks and witches were known throughout Europe as the protectors of the sacred knowledge. Now, think about it this way: why is it that only the victors get to tell the stories? Why do we never hear the stories of the losers? Okay. When Christians go in, they introduce their doctrines. This is proven through Nicholas Remy's book, Demonolatry, an ancient and historical account of witchcraft, where they documented everything found on the accused witches, okay, that were associated with demons, okay, things that were taught to them by the demonic, okay. Why not things that were, why don't they teach anything to do with angelics? Okay, how about the angels? Think about what the angels taught mankind. Okay, but you don't see this. Okay, not in any Hollywood produced film at all. Okay, but yet you got things such as the Enochian keys put forth by Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly. One was a medium, the other one was an astrologer, an astronomer. You go back even further, and you got the Book of Tobit, the Zohar, the Talmud. These are old scrolls, old texts that show how angels taught mankind a lot of things. Even the book of Enoch, that was banned from the Christian Bible, literally goes into play, showing the details about how the angels took wives unto themselves and taught mankind alchemy, such as forging weapons, such as the art of seduction, and all this other stuff. But you don't hear that because Hollywood produced films have come across the JCI, the Judo Christian Institution's ways of thinking, and this is what sells in the public, or I should say, in the industry, because that's what it is. It's about this, doing whatever it takes to gain money. Okay? So, this was something that was put forth by this one practitioner, Eldora Crow. Now, ironically, the following day, I was on Facebook, just kind of going down through my messages, going down through the groups that I'm a part of. I don't really associate in most of the groups that I'm in, but every so often I like to just transverse through, just to see what's up. I mean, sometimes, most of the time, it's been updated like 2-3 months, 2-3 years ago. I think the oldest one that I'm a part of hasn't been updated in like 6-7 years. Yeah, that's what happens when you don't have actual foundations, is that they just die out. People get bored with it. Nobody teaches, so it's like, whatever. But anyways, this was a post that was in a group on jinn, okay, the genie. Depending on if you're in Africa or going up into the Middle East, you get different spellings of the name, okay? Jinn, genie, the jinn, okay? Now, the jinn are a lot like the Devi in Hinduism, okay? And what's interesting is, in the Islamic world, the jinn bring both good and bad omens, just like the Devi. But it is more not about angels or demons, but more about the lessons that they can teach you. And it's ironic to see this because it goes all the way back to Asmodeus, the king of the jinn. We know him as El Shaitan. Okay. And if you go back to the ancient world, you'll notice some of the texts actually speak to him being the king of the jinn. And hell, even the book of Tobit speaks to him as a lover, the demon of desire, if you will, as we know him today, demon of wrath and desire. And what's interesting here is to note that in this particular book, we see how this specific spirit, this entity, is going after one woman. He wanted this woman for himself. Now, how is this any different from that of Hades and what he did to his wife, Persephone? Think about that for just a moment. Or what about God impregnating Mary against her will? He didn't even ask. He just did, and then sent an angel to prophesy to Joseph. Wow. How is that any different? But Hollywood will not touch this shit. The world will not touch this shit. Only those who practice the arts dare to question and dare to get to know these spirits. So, in this particular group, it was based off the jinn magic. The question that was put forth by this uneducated individual was, how do you kill a dark spirit, a dark jinn, an evil jinn? How do you kill an evil jinn? Okay. I had to laugh. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You don't kill a spirit. They're beyond you. Most you can do is an exorcism, if you will, a banishing. Okay, but you can't kill them. I mean, there are certain rites where you can tempt fate and try to challenge them. I'm not going to get into those rights because I'm not permitted to because of my associations presently. But what I can tell you is this particular right allows you to try to conquer them and to absorb their power. In a lot of sense, this is vampiric magic, but also that of necromantic. So, with that said, there's a lot of omens. The Bible speaks, for an example, the JCI Bible in the book of Revelations and throughout the book of Ezekiel. Let's go with Ezekiel chapter 1 and that of Revelations chapter 4. We see where an object comes down from the heavens, four different faces on, depending on which direction you're facing. One has one of a lion, one has one of a bird, another one of a man, and so forth. But they also have different types, amount of wings, depending if you're reading from Ezekiel 1 or Revelations 4. Okay. Now, what's ironic here about this symbolism is it takes place in the so-called end times, where this motorized vehicle that stretches from the heavens to the earth and is tearing a single path through the earth. Okay. One has four wings, the other one has eight. Ironic how that happens, right? But yet they have a lot of eyes, much like a medium or a seer, an oracle, if you will, the all seeing oracle types. Now, we see where angels have played a part throughout human history, not just in biblical. We see where Michael came down and slaughtered an entire army while they slept like a fucking coward. But then you see Raphael, you see, what's his name? Gabriel, who comes down and prophesies to Joseph in the New Testament. Wow. Okay. But yet Lucifer, much like El Shaitan, or how about Prometheus, for that in Greek, just out of an example, steals fire from the gods and gives it to mankind. We see this with Azazel. Okay. We see how he taught mankind how to create fire, how to forge weapons and armor, how to paint your face for the art of seduction or warfare, or even spiritual warfare for that matter. I mean, look at the Agora out of Hinduism, India. Okay. Now, what's interesting is angels, such as the Watchers, 200 legions, 200 came to earth, according to the book of Enoch. But yet we only get four small little scriptures that speak to this. The last one, ending with the Nephilim, the children, the hybrids of human women and that of the angels, men of renowned wisdom. So, how can they be evil? Okay, how can they be evil? They're educating mankind. They were giants among the land. But yet, we can go into the book of Giants, we can go into the book of Enoch, the Bible, and we can see all this stuff. But yet, even if you go into the older text, you see a whole different perspective of the symbolism of what they represent, what they're capable of doing. Look at the omens of the skies. It used to be that people could look at the stars and go, okay, northern star, southern star, these are the different symbols that we see in the night sky. We call them zodiacs, we call them astrological symbolism. And we can tell you exactly which way to go: north, east, west, south, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, whatever. And we can guide ourselves accordingly underneath the night sky. You can look at the sunset and tell exactly what the weather is going to be like the following day, if it's pink, if it's orange, if it's yellowish orange or whatever. Is it going to be dark? You know, you can always tell if it's going to be extremely hot the next day, if it's going to be, cool the next day. Is it going to be cloudy the next day? Because you can always tell by aromancy, by the seven so-called deadly, practices. And it's ironic because if you actually go back into old views, such as the Hexa, the Strega, the necromancer, the shaman, we see how they painted their face. We see how they use drum beats. We see how they use runes and languages, prayers to associate. Now, in the book of Tobit, like I mentioned, Raphael was the one that went to mankind and said, this last brother, and said, hey, put the gallbladder of this specific fish on the door, and Asmodeus will not bother you again. You see what I mean? Symbolism, right? Now, what does that gallbladder represent? What does it represent? The Black Tower, welcome to the channel, brother. And I did see you chiming in there. I just wanted to get this out of my head before I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so anyways, there is a lot of symbolism out there. For an example, I went back through some of my older books from the library that I have and that I put together over a long career. This is actually my second library. And the first book I grabbed was The Mechanics of Demonolatry, and it was by H.P. Haggard. Think of her as the Mother Teresa aspect, okay? And it looks like this. This is the hardcover version. And, we hear about the symbolism of demonic oppression, demonic possession aspects. We deal with the signs and the symbols and the omens that surround it, like flies or speaking in unknown languages. I mean, we used to say that was God's work, through the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 1 through 4, but now apparently speaking in other languages is now a cardinal sin. It's a sign of demonic activity. Wow. Okay. So you can see how things change over time. But anyways, G.P. Haggard, she actually wrote about her experiences in college with a Ouija board. Okay, yeah, you heard me right. A Ouija board. Okay, I love utilizing Ouija boards. I love it. It's like cartomancy, modern day tarot card readings. Hell, I even use bones and runes. Okay, but here it is. Apparently, one of her classmates that was there during that seance, if you will, got totally possessed. And it took about a few minutes, it lasted about 5 minutes. Apparently, the person had strength of 10 men, like Hercules. And, or say, for an example, Jason and the Argonauts. Let's go with about Ulysses, from Homer's Odyssey, the only one that could string a bow. Okay, where does that strength comes from? But yet this individual was supposedly possessed, red eyes, had no memory of how she went from the den to the front porch. Okay. Apparently that scared her so terribly bad that she ran to the church. Now, do we not see this stuff in Hollywood produced films? Do we not see this in certain movies where you got the druids in Warlocks? I believe it's Warlock 3, Armageddon, if I'm not mistaken. Starring Julian Sands and, some of the greats today. But yet, what's interesting is how they have their little secret organizations. But yet, anything outside of that is considered devil worship. So it's evil. He's here to destroy the world, collect stones. Okay, so that explains why people have been collecting stones for hundreds of thousands of years. I mean, think about it. Where do you think your pearl necklaces come from? Where do you think your all your stuff that sits in your den, such as your paperweights, are made out of? What do you think iron is made out of? How about those racks that you use at work? These are all things that came from the earth. This is geomancy, okay? But it is created through alchemy. Alchemy and other practices. Now let's think pyromancy. Let's think pyromancy, okay? With geomancy right now. The other day, I was at work, and I happened to hear a ding on my phone. So I looked. I thought, one of the upper management was messaging me, and it turned out to be Newsbreak. It's basically a national or international news reporter, and it can be used for local stuff too. And this particular ad had a highlight saying that Yellowstone National Park erupted. Well, I guess the whole world's going under now because it erupted. Okay, anybody who's watched the Sci-Fi Channel or the Discovery Channel, I should say, would know that if Yellowstone, erupted, then it's a global killer because it's a super volcano. It's classified as a super volcano. So there would be signs such as earthquakes, water heating up. You would find things such as mudslides or sinkholes, things that were indicators that this super volcano was going to erupt. But no, it was not going to erupt. But yet, this was designed to get a illicit response. Okay. And in this case, all it was a forest fire, a fucking forest fire. But instead of saying Yellowstone National Park on fire, they used the term eruption. That it erupted. Hmm. Talk about a fear gatherer. Wow. Okay. So by paying attention to the signs and symbols of just about every aspect, doesn't matter if it's telling the fortune of what's coming, the weather's going to be like the day before, watching a tornado come down, where it's going to strike, the ground. Is it a sidewinder? Is it going to jump? What direction it's going to turn. There's always a sign. Okay. Even if we're talking demonic invocations or evocations, there are always a sign of who you're dealing with, who you're summoning. Even if you're using sigil magic, for an example, sigil magic is a form of connecting and focusing your intent on a specific entity. Okay. And if you're utilizing divination tools such as a pendulum, a rune, a deck of, a set of runes or a cartomancy deck, even if you want to get into scrying, like basin, the old basin jars filled with water, goes all the way back to the first, dynasty of Egypt, goes into proto cultures all over the old world. Okay. A lot of this stuff is real deal stuff. It shows you how to summon spirits, how to transcend the planes of existence. Hell, read Homer's Odyssey, Paradise Lost. Okay, look at the poetical texts. Okay, the poetical text, which is 17th century, by the way. Ironically, this is where Jesus went to the underworld, removed Beelzebub, Lord of Flies, the Lord of the Witches' Sabbath, from the throne of the underworld and place Satan on the throne. So Satan is not the national bad guy. He was given an office. Okay? But the signs go back further. let's look at the Bible. Okay, let's go into the Gospels. Okay, for an example, in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it tells how three wise men not only used astronomy, but wisdom to locate this infant that was newly born by Joseph and Mary. These were three wise men. Interesting how that works, right? So they use the signs of the stars to indicate a child's birth. And the king of the land sent his soldiers out to kill every newborn child of that particular day because he feared that child, because it would mean his end. Okay? But yet, the Old Testament is full of so called prophets that came before. Why were they not hated? I mean, outside of John being beheaded at the request of somebody, some strange woman. Or how about Daniel being put into a lion's den, his friends being put into a furnace? How is that not different of, say, for an example, using herbs for necromancy purposes, geometric shapes, to summon spirits and apparitions, to seeing the signs of ghosts and demonic activities? There's always a sign there. So you got the spiritual and you got the physical applications of signs, symbols, and omens. And so, I mean, you got so many different things. G.P. Haggard had one experience and it drove her literally to the church. But yet she wrote this huge book as the Mother Teresa type, talks about her example, her history, but also goes into the demonic activities, symbolism, things like the cross, the pentagram, and so forth. Okay. And how it's associated with numerology and everything in between. And even as occultists, we utilize astronomy, we utilize the numerology. The church does the exact same thing. So, how are we any different? But yet, the church is looking to destroy and wipe out anyone not of their faith. Okay. One of the other books that I got was called The Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated. This book was very interesting because it had so many different symbols in here. A lot of them I didn't even have a clue about when I first got this book. And it was interesting because I never really paid much attention to symbolism until this particular book. Okay. Now, what I found interesting about this was when I started getting into going from the atheistic perspective of being a Satanist and getting more spiritual, because I had an encounter years ago where I literally hit that wall and it was like something broke and I made the choice. I made the decision. And I asked for any spirit out there that was willing to help me, because obviously this wasn't working or that wasn't working. But this one spirit did come to me when I was 5, again when I was 11. And I've worked with this spirit for a long, long time over my career. And there was always signs and symbols that were associated with his activity, not just my patron, Astaroth. Okay. Even when I worked with Beelzebub or Alistar, Abaddon, Satan or Satan, El Shaitan, it was the exact same thing. Signs and symbols were always there. Like, something's up when 3 customers in a row, you end up with $6.66 back to the customer. Okay, not joking. And it was funny because they order a certain amount of stuff and they give you a 10 and you end up getting that amount back to them, 666. So you see how that symbolism plays in. And of course, everybody is so superstitious because of what they've been led to believe by the JCI. They will either take something away from their order or they will add to it at the window. I cannot gather, I cannot fathom enough how often you see this. Okay? It is so fucking funny. So that's how superstitious people are, especially when it's omens or signs. So now, apparently, there is a serpent or reptilian type creature at the bottom of the ocean, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and moving out towards the ocean. A lot of people, a lot of churches and individuals of civilization believe it is Leviathan, otherwise known in the old tongue as Dagon. Okay, Dagon is the older serpent of the deep, and this goes back pre-biblical. Okay, when we get into biblical, we hear the term Canaanite. Now, what this is basically modern day Lebanon, if you will. So, if you go back to ancient Lebanon, you got the Canaanites. You go back even further, and you got what is known as the Chaldeans. Now, Dagon is considered to be a prince, but yet really holds no real power, okay, in the underworld, according to demonology, okay, and these texts, such as the Jewish Haggadah, for an example, the Zohar, and a few others. But it's very interesting to see the signs and symbols and how they're equating to the Book of Revelations and how events are supposedly unfolding. But yet, everybody for the last 100 years, the last 1,000 years, has worked diligently to wage war in the Middle East. Why? To surround Israel, aligning themselves with the enemies of Israel. Wow. Okay. And Israel is supposedly God's chosen people, right? But yet the Bible speaks to everybody aligning with them, the enemies. You have people trying to work with Israel, like America, for an example. And if you go back into Hollywood, you'll see a series called The End Times. This is where many people just suddenly disappear, and those left are just wondering what the fuck, and then they have to deal with the so-called devil, okay? The prophet, the dragon, the, the Messiah, if you will, and so forth, the Antichrist, all before Satan supposedly appears. Ironically, that is straight out of the book of Revelations. And Herbert Locklear actually did a huge book, a very good book on just using biblical aspects on just describing that. And this was a guy that wrote an entire hardcover series back in the 1980s. Okay. And he had one for the women of the Bible, one for the men of the Bible, one for the prophecies of the Bible, one for the parables of the Bible, and so forth and so forth. And I think it was like 18 books, roughly about this size. It was like 18 books, I believe, 17 or 18 books. And I first was made aware of this guy back in, what was it? About '07, I think. '07, '08 area. It was one of my first girlfriends that I had, and she was completely schizophrenic. One of those betrayers that it didn't matter what you did. It was just she'll betray you for no reason. Like she'll cast you out, or she'll give you her word and then break it and all that stuff. But here's the thing. I first I first became associated with Herbert Locklear's work, familiar, I should say, during that time, because I was invited to that church, and it was called the Glad Tidings was the name of the church. So I went. I did not like that church. I did not like anything about it. There was, it made me sick to my stomach. I even passed out, and the doctors found no evidence of any ailments whatsoever, outside of me being a little bit dehydrated. But it was, according to the medical personnel that was there in the sanctuary that day, I was stiff as a board. My eyes were all over the place. My skin turned gray. Now, there was something about that place that I did not relate to, and it was something that caused an adverse reaction. Okay. So when you look at those events, from the time I got there, and I was there for a good 2 to 3 months. Okay. And every fucking time I was sick to my stomach, I got hot. And I mean hot. Okay. Dizzy, lightheaded. Most of the time it passed, but that one time I actually had to be taken to the hospital in an ambulance because of that adverse reaction to what was going on there. Today I know that as the signs of two different souls. There are two different soul types. According to Constantinos in his book Nocturnal Witchcraft, there are four soul types. Okay, and not all of them are evil. And it's funny because when you think about this, and a lot of people don't, there is a reaction to every action. Okay. For an example, he put forth a symbol, if you will, a plus sign. You have good and evil, light and dark. And if you make a circle in the center where that plus sign is, or cross, if you will, you have the four soul types associated with those 4 points. Okay. And you can actually build upon them within a structured model on every aspect. So here it is, the signs and symbols as an equal and opposite personage, if you will. Yahweh, Satan, Michael, Lucifer. Okay, go back into the older texts and grimoires, the older religions like Zoroastrianism, for an example. You have the mad god. Okay, Ahura Mazda versus Orion. Okay, go into the Necronomicon and you got Marduk versus Tiamat. Go back into the Dead Sea Scrolls and you have Michael, the leader of the sons and daughters of light, versus the sons and daughters of darkness, led by Belial. Belial today. Okay, but people don't realize all the symbolism. All these things are equating together. There's a balance factor. So when you see somebody utilizing symbols and they have no clue, this is my one of my latest books, and let me see if I can get it up here for you. I'm trying to. There we go. Symbols of the Occult. I actually found this one at I wouldn't call it a dollar store per se, but it was called Martin's. Okay, and I found this on this shelf, and I had to get it. And I'm literally glad I did because it speaks to the zodiacs. It speaks to the male and female energies. It speaks to the casting a natal horoscope design. Okay, if you will. Very interesting. But more than that, it gets into the Mayan calendar. And a lot of people, if you remember back in the late 90s, such as 1999 to 2000 area, it was supposed to be the Y2K, right? Well, how did they know it was supposed to be the Y2K? It was supposed to end the world, and people worked themselves up so much so that when it was over, they were made to look the fools. Think of COVID for an example. When that struck, everybody just ran to the stores and cleaned off the shelves, just like any natural um, catastrophe. Okay, but yet these are things that you could foretell of coming, because if you look at any major plague, every 100 years you have one major plague. We just had COVID. Go back 100 years, and you got the Spanish influenza. Go back another 100 years, and you got the Black Plague, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Okay, you got languages. Okay, the cuneiform scripts. You got ancient Greek alphabets, and what's I? You got hieroglyphs and everything, all in that one book. And it's interesting because when you think of the old practices, let's say, for an example, let's go into witchcraft. We use things such as phylacteries, be it relics, be it totems, be it amulets or talismans. Okay. What's the difference between them? Okay. An amulet is something that you wear. Think of it like this. Okay. Something that you wear for protection, much like an Orcrox, if you will. A magical ring. It's used for protection. Okay. You go into the Black Pellet, for an example, and you see where talismans come into play within a magical usage. And this is normally has a magical alphabet, an inscription, or it has a hieroglyphic, okay, and an image. Think of ancient Egypt when you go to a pyramid and you got all these depictions like animals all over the walls, and all these drawings and stuff, and it literally tells a story. But yet, if you notice, you can actually utilize those as a calendar, as a association with events. Okay, more so, different pharaohs had different totem animals. So one would have a bird, another would have a serpent, and so forth. And now this has worked its way into Hollywood produced films such as Stargate, the Stargate series. Okay, I'm talking SG1, not Atlantis or the universe, the third franchise. Even though, from what I understand, there's going to be another, the return, if you will. I'm not sure if that's actually going to be a thing, much like the upcoming return of Charmed, the one with Alyssa Milano, Holly Marie Combs, Rose McGowan, and the late Prue Hollywell herself, Shannon Doherty. Another great actress and actor dead. This is why I don't get excited, because every time I like somebody, I like their work, they end up dying, like Anthony Hopkins. You get into certain Julian Sands and so forth. Fucking hate it, but it's there. But anyways, the signs and symbols are there. The omens are there. So you have the talismans, which has a magical alphabet or a depiction of some kind within a hieroglyphic perspective that has that will protect a home or a specific area, like a village, if you will. And again, if you go to Hollywood produced films, these are actually utilized. Talismans are utilized in hanging from trees. If you go to season one, I think it's season one or season two of Charmed, you'll see where they're sent back in time to the 16th century to meet their founding grandmother. Okay, the beginning stages of their line that led to the power of three. And they go to rescue this woman who's pregnant with the first witch of their lineage. Okay, and she was actually associated with that particular bloodline. And there was an evil witch. There was a demon played by Cole. That was Cole Turner. That went back and was working with the witch hunters and everything, and a witch of that time. And what happened was, if you go to the tree, it shows these amulets hanging from the tree. Now, later in the show, it shows all these witch hunters going after the three sisters. Okay. Now, what did they do? They cut apples in half and they put a plant in the mix with the apple. And they tossed it at the four cardinal directions and it created a protective barrier. Okay. Sweeping to a specific direction cleanses or sweeps away negative energy, right? But yet, if we do this shit today, it's associated with things like role playing games, okay, or demon activity. Interesting how that goes, right? And this is fed down from the church to the government to the legal system to the community, okay? And what's interesting is the community's perspective. It doesn't matter what you say. A lot of times they don't want to hear that this is old school. This is what they used to do to determine the ailments. This is what they used to determine remedies. This is what they used to practice their craft in the old days. Look at Baba Yaga, okay? Slavic witchcraft. Look at Freya in Nordic traditions. Look at Isis and Egyptian. How about Hecate in Greek? In fact, outside of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, justice, ghosts, the underworld, and necromancy, we also have a goddess that is associated with just mysticism alone. Huh. Interesting. And that's just in Greek mythology. But yet, herbalism, alchemy, astronomy, the seven forbidden practices of necromancy, geomancy, aeromancy, pyromancy. What is it called? There's like seven of them right off the bat. I'm still getting the fog out of my brain, so I do apologize. So you have all of this stuff that is historically recorded, and yet people are going to believe a hostile religion in what's put forth by Hollywood produced films. Ignorance is bliss. Okay? So the last thing I want to show you is my very first grimoire, or one of my oldest grimoires. And I marked the page. And I drew several when I was doing my first research into sigils and getting into Satanism all those years ago. I wrote down some of the information associated with some of these symbols, these sigils. For an example, the seal of Lucifer. That would be this one here. Okay. It is used to invoke the powers of Satan and to bring him forth. Its roots dates back to the 16th century Italian Grimorium Verum, or Grimoire of Truth, as a magical symbol. It is used in conjunction with other symbols. Okay. Now, anybody who studied the difference between Satan and Lucifer within angelology will tell you that Satan is not Lucifer and Lucifer is not Satan. Satan was a Grigore. He was a watcher angel, the chief. He watched humanity, even reported to other gods saying, hey, your people aren't living right for you. But yet he was associated through the poetical text by being put on the throne of the underworld and replacing Beelzebub, Lord of Flies. Okay. Lucifer was an archangel and he was known as the most gorgeous angel of them all. Okay. So you got a watcher angel, a Gorai, and that of a archangel. Two different classes of angels. Agoras were the first order. The archangels were second. The healers were the third, and so forth. But people don't do their research into this stuff. I think the most realistic TV show that I've ever seen would be Supernatural, starring Jensen Ackles. and that other guy. But anyways, the next one would be the pentagram, the pentacle. Penta, its history as a religion symbol has been identified as long and complex. The symbol was actually discovered scrawled in caves in ancient Babylonia. The 5 points represent the planet Venus, while it is in Lucifer, traveling in a five-pointed path. It is a very popular it is very popular in Greek tradition and was also received by Hebrews as being a popular seal in the Testament of Solomon. It is also believed to control demons. Was actually a hexagram, Star of David, if you will. And right there, that's kind of also a level of ignorance because modern pagans and Wiccans utilize it as a circle of protection. In essence, it is a symbol of power. It's an empowerment symbol. And then you have the Order of the Nine Angles. The Order of the Nine Angles, as you know, is a traditional Satanism tradition that was built on physical super soldier, if you will, belief structures of hard work, dedication, knowledge, and so forth. Think of think of the Illuminati or the real Illuminati from the 15th century, not this scam artist BS that you see today. But the built was, or even the Masonic Lodge, the Masons, if you will. They collected knowledge and wisdom and grew through scientific aspects. This is a form of alchemy, by the way. Science is the modern day usage of alchemy. So, and in this case, we're talking mind, body, and spirit. Okay. This symbol is the badge of a satanic secret society known as the Order of the Nine Angles, or ONA, if you will. Those angels are divided from the connections between the seven Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. Whenever this symbol is identified, one can be sure that this order will be involved in the area. Okay. The equal armed cross, as I mentioned, and I wanted you to see that. I don't know. Let me see here. Right there. That's what Constantinos put forth. Okay. Kind of gives you that visual, perspective of balance, right? Good light, good evil light, good dark, evil dark. So you get the four soul types. So this symbol represents and helps us understand the relationships between good and evil to the essences of light and dark. Each pole in this simple cross represents a pair of misunderstood opposites. And that's basically what it is. So when you think of the jinn or the devi, it is not good or evil or angels versus demons. It is more about the lessons that they can teach individuals when things get out of balance. Okay, it's kind of like a wake up call, if you will. Think of the omens, if you will, of the times, the signs of the times. And believe me, Catholics, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, really has paid a huge amount of time just watching the stars, the planets, and all of the solar system, if you will, on just that alone. Just to foretell, oh, Lucifer's coming to Earth. He's coming to dinner. Okay. Sorry, a little humor there. Dry humor, but still. The reversed cross. This cross is one of the oldest symbols in the world. Every religion and culture has some representation of a cross symbol. From Christianity for the root of the divine, new life, celestial, and the sun. Most pagans of Europe during ancient times, it was removed from pagan usage and placed and or applied to Christian religions. The reverse cross was a symbol of the opposite of the apostle Peter, who was crucified upside down because he didn't feel he was worthy to die in the same way as his so-called savior, or as we know him today as a wizard or a warlock himself, who practiced witchcraft, mediumship, spiritualism, spiritual invocations and evocations of witchcraft. Okay, Christians refer to him as their God and Savior, the Son of God. Okay, who was crucified upside down because he felt unworthy of dying in this upright position. However, satanic occults have taken up this symbol to represent Satan and the opposite position of Christ, the Antichrist like. Now, what's interesting about the inverted cross is it's the same way as the pentagram. Anybody can flip a symbol upside down and call it dark or evil. Okay? Anybody can do this. Does it make it evil? Does it make it vile? No. It just simply has a usage saying, hey, you know, we are opposed to what you stand for. We don't like what you're standing for. We're doing what we want to do and what we believe. I mean, look at the war in the Middle East, the first, second, and third invasion of Israel. Jerusalem, the Holy Lands, by the Knights of Templar, who were supposed to be originally protectors of the crossroads. Okay, then condemned themselves for devil worship because of Baphomet. Okay, yeah. Then you have the witch trials, the burning times, and so forth, the Renaissance. But in modern day, it's basically flipped upside down to refer to as the defiance. The two horns are thrusting upward in a form of defiance. Now, if you go into the Bible, it says that the heel will bruise the head of the serpent. Okay, so you're thrusting upward in defiance. 2 points up, 3 down. Okay, so the pentagram of Solomon, the tetragrammation. The pentagram of Solomon, as depicted in the Leamington, the tetragrammation, a Hebrew word, is translated to English and written around the axioms of the stars. It's used to contain and call forth demons and to compel and to bind demons as well. This is associated with the lesser and greater keys of Solomon, associated with planetary structures and the spirits of those planets, not just the individuals that represent those particular planets. Now, in modern day, we have the usage of this for an example. Okay, this is a symbol that symbolizes atheistic Satanism, but also different satanic circles, and they have different styles of them. And this is associated with whatever satanic sect that you're associated with, be it the Thulian, the Satanic Thulian Society, or the Order of the Nine Angles, the Church of Satan, the Joy of Satan, or say, for example, the Satanic Temple, if you will. This symbol first became highly popularized because of LaVey, okay, who was a devil worshiper that now the Church of Satan is now associated with atheistic Satanism. But yet they don't realize that the forces that they're calling on was actual spirits, okay? So the name Mendes goat has its ties or connection to the Mendes Pinnacle in sabbatic goat symbol. This symbol was introduced into Satanism by Magus Anton Zander LaVey during the construction of the Church of Satan in 1966 in adding Hebrew letters that spell Leviathan. Okay. In biblical scripture, Leviathan is a monstrous sea monster. Again, Dagon. From the Old Testament, from both books of Job and Psalms. The Church of Satan represents this symbol and identifies it with the Judas goat, aka Judas of the Gospels. It is sometimes confused with Eliphas Levi's symbol of the Baphomet. The Mendes goat originates from the Egyptian god Ammon of Mendes, Egyptian on Ptah. That's Ptah, the Egyptian god of magic, knowledge, and wisdom. Today we call him Thoth, if you will, thanks to Aleister Crowley. Or alias of Satan, Ptah being the lord of the serpents, who was also referred to as the goat or ram in many cities in Egypt where it was worshipped. Interesting how that works, right? So you can see where all of this symbolism isn't just modern day. A lot of times, if you go back in your history is written by the victors. So it's up to every individual to delve into history and find the roots and the sources of each symbol. For an example, the oldest known spelling of Satan goes back to a scripture known as the Munich manuscripts, where it's Sathan. Okay, but it also goes back to the Zohar, the Jewish Haggadah, and the Talmud as well. This is ancient Sanskrit. Okay, and a lot of people don't realize that. They don't teach this shit no more. And unfortunately, the schools don't teach it anyways. But yet they're going to make the Bible, a curriculum, a mandated curriculum in the school departments, such as in Oklahoma, made recently. Anything outside of that is considered illegal and not allowed, not permitted. And if you practice any form, you're not permitted in the school. Well, guess what? That goes against the First Amendment rights, both of free speech and religious practice. So much for the constitutional rights, right? Yeah. So, and not mention the legal rights of every child is mandated to have an education. And it's not based off church or state, but yet people continuously put these two together, even though they're supposedly separate. Wow, I know, right? Shocker. So, what have we learned here? Don't believe everything that you hear on social media or what people tell you. Okay? You want to do your own research. You want to learn for yourself. No one else is going to learn for you. No one's going to help you get there. Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, those who earnestly seek will be guided, because no information shall be held back from those who earnestly seek truth in education that will benefit them through education, self-prosperity, and growth. The rest of you can just go fuck off. That's the way I look at it. But that's just my personal opinion. So, let's see. You've written quite a bit, Black Tower. Let me catch up here. Yeah, the so-called witch wars of modern times seems to be a thing today. I don't know what it is. There was a big thing with Christian Day and what's her name? The Italian Strega herself from Salem, Mass. And personally, I find Christian Day, his book was awesome. I will give him that. He runs a great business called Hex. But the guy's literally a drama queen. He's feeding in beyond what actually is, being said. I played devil's advocate once to him, and he blocked me. Thought it was funny as all hell. Apparently, somebody called somebody a monkey, and he thought that was racist. It's like, hell, I call my son a monkey, but does that make me racist against children? No. I can call my boss an idiot. Does that make me racist against bosses? No. I find it interesting that every culture, every race and creed has their own language, but yet if anybody else uses it, oh my God, they get fucking offended. But yet the Bible clearly points out that we live in during the end times. One of the things that will occur is brother against brother, sister against sister, parent against child, and so forth. Complete chaos. Look at what's going on in the world today, right? Another example of omens and signs of the end times. You know, everybody's threatening nuclear warfare. Wow. So, but yeah, the modern day witch wars, it's pathetic and childish, in my opinion. You don't like somebody, just stay the fuck away from them. That's the way I look at it. Just do you, you know. But unfortunately, humanity is not that smart. Yeah, exactly. Hundreds of years, and they still have beef. Eugene Gonzalez Whippler. Oh, I loved his works. I love that. That guy's an incredible historian and archaeologist, if you will. One of the greatest books was called Satanism and Demonolatry, and it was put out by Patricia and Lionel Fanthorpe. The accounts of devil worship going hundreds and thousands of years back being recorded by cultures and everything. Amazing. This guy, they literally brought forth the imagery of the city of the gods. You can actually find that one in the Necromicon as well, not just the kingdoms of what we call Satan or God today. The spiritual nexus, if you will. Go back into the Paradise Lost or Homer's Odyssey, Dante's Inferno, and you see how there's gateways to these places, and there's always omens around, like signs and symbols that show you the path to those cities, be it hieroglyphics, if you will. Amazing archaeological, historical, and thanatology practices. Even if you get into anthropology. Anthropology is fuck, dude. When I got into anthropology practices and research and stuff, started learning about different cultures, how they lived, what they practiced. Fuck, dude. The four different classes of it. Jeez, that was mind blowing information right there. Go down to modern day Brazil, and you see a wall with a city printed on it with a handprint that's supposedly said to open the door to the city of the gods. Amazing. And yet older cultures believe jumping into a lake will take you to Hades, or going into a volcano will take you there too. That there's a doorway to the city of the gods, such as Olympus and so forth. There's all kinds of texts and stories about this. Think about the alternative realm of where you meet Morpheus, the dreamer, Cthulhu, the dreamer, or let's say for an example, Baba Yaga in her house on chicken legs, same exact thing, And yet here we are with Patricia and Lionel Fanthorpe's book, Satanism and Demonolatry. Bam, actual fucking proof from a historical, archaeological, folklore, and mythological perspective within anthropology. Amazing how they did that. Yeah, I've heard of that. I never really got into it though. I'll have to get in. I'll have to find it and purchase it sometime. All three parts. See, that's the other thing, right there. That's the other thing, Black Tower, is that you have what is known as the Shem priesthood out of first, second, and third dynasty of Egypt. I mean, the term priest and priestess goes back hundreds of thousands of years, going and viewed from witchcraft perspectives as well within tribal and older communities, who were responsible for telling the signs and the omens. Is it a good time to go hunting? Is it a good time, to go to warfare against a neighboring tribe? Is it a good time to get married or whatever? And this is stuff that has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. So I mean, even going back to proto cultures, or as Buckland would call it, proto. What do you call that? Polytheistic and cultures. Paleolithic era. That's the term I was thinking of. Paleolithic era. Priesthoods have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, so people thinking that Christianity is the only one that has priesthoods, fuck you. History shows another version of it. That's the way I look at it. You got, let's take a look at a few of these. For example, the Order of the Black Robes, okay, goes back to the 12th century. Think of the book known as the Codex Gigas. One monk that was walled up and sentenced to death wrote this book supposedly with the help of the devil in one night. It takes 4 people to carry the damn thing. So today it's known as the largest book ever to be created. Go back to the first, second, and third dynasty. You have the Shem priesthood. That's SEM priesthood. Go back to the Oracle of ancient Greek. Go into the Druids, the Gaelics, Druids. They were known as the priesthood. Go into the 6th century all the way to the late 12th century, and you have the Hashishin. They were holy men, also known as Samsara in Arabic, meaning assassin. They're highly trained in combat. Go into the Knights of Templar, the personal army of the Pope in the Church, the Vatican, that were condemned to devil worship. They were monks who were highly trained in warfare, in combat. So Christians, you are not the first priesthood. You are not the only one. And those are just examples. You look at some of the omens of the death. Look at the sin eater. Look at practices. Look at fortune telling, how it became illegal and associated with fraudulent activities within European law. Even here in the U.S., the last known case to be tried for the witch trials was a woman who foretold a sinking of a ship by the Bismarck, and she caught the government with their britches down and got put on trial for being a witch. Well, guess what? If it wasn't for Churchill, this woman would be dead. She ended up living out her life and dying, I think, in her 60s, if I remember correctly. But without those signs and those omens, the exact date, time, and everything being spoken of when the ship went down, when it was lost at sea due to the sinking by the Bismarck, the depiction of the apparition of the spirit and so forth through conjuration of spirits, which is a necromantic practice, by the way, not just mediumship in today's world. But you consider that all of this played into the fact that the mother went to the government and said, hey, why didn't you tell us this? We needed to know that our children were dead. And this woman got put on trial for witchcraft. She was arrested and tried, but she was not convicted because it was soon after this trial that the Witchcraft Act was disbanded in 1937 to 1939 area. And then humanity didn't learn from that, and we got the Satanic Panic. Yeah. And now we got the witchcraft trials all over again. It's like an endless circle of stupidity. You too, Black Tower. It's good to have you on here again, by the way. This video will be up, so you can come back and watch the rest of it. And I know you will anyway, So when you get into signs and symbols and omens, symbolism comes in many forms and fashions. And that's why it's important to do your own homework, because if you just simply take things at face value you're going to be led astray like these so-called Christians. And what's interesting about Christianity is they indoctrinate you at birth. Now, did you ever stop to ask yourself why? It's to prevent you from learning about all these other practices that they deem devilish, okay? Evil, vile. And here it is. What's also ironic about this is that they put you in a state of slavehood, which is damned if you do and damned if you don't. He's the only way, but yet, wait for it, you can't do it on your own. So basically, this puts you in a state of you're at the mercy of whatever the fuck they tell you. And their motto is do what I tell you to do, not as I do. Even Anton Szandor LaVey picked that up right in the Satanic Bible. I mean, if you get into the secret life of a Satanist, for an example, he even spoke about his early childhood, his experiences throughout his adult life, from his teenage years all the way up into adulthood, and his observations of the church. Now, you take time and you spend time around Christians, going to different churches, you're going to see the signs and the omens stating this is not a good fucking place. This is not a good place. This is about being a slave. And then you got different factions within this church. They have their own idea of what it is. You can't clean out your own backyard and be one body, but yet you expect to police the world and condemn every other practice out there, to destroy it out of what? Fear? Ignorance? Bliss? Power? And then you have what is today. You have what's going on in the world today. All these signs, all these omens, all these symbolism is around. But if you don't do your own homework, how are you going to know this stuff? I mean, sure, I just told you a small amount of it. Just a small amount. Just enough to whet your appetite. To kind of point you in the right direction. Kind of give you those hints. Hey, these are the works that I would recommend. These are things that I'd recommend you look into. But I'm not going to tell you what to believe. That's up to you. Do the work yourself. It's the only way you're going to grow. I had a boss when I first started almost 10 years ago with Dunkin' Donuts. He said, I can sit you in front of the TV, the computer system, but nothing beats hands-on experience. Basically, what he was saying was out of the frying pan, straight into the fire. It's the best way to learn. Boom, you're in the frying pan, the fire, learn for yourself. Nothing beats hands-on experience. It is something that I've always held close. That was wise words from a man in his 60s. And then on top of that, the way he spoke, he said, don't worry about who comes in after. It's one drink at a time. One drink at a time. And if you take that analogy and you look at what you're doing, you look at your practices, you're studying signs, okay? Look at the different symbols. Look at all the signs of the times. Look at what's going on into the world. How does it relate to your world? How does it relate to your practice? How does it relate to who you are and what you're about? Look at the omens. Look at the symbolism of it. Is it associated with animals, animal guides, animal totems? Ravens, for an example, are associated with spirits. They take the spirits from the realm of the living to the realm of the dead. You have serpents, which were renowned, just like ravens, to be wisdom. Okay? Different animals have different representations. If you're looking at the zodiacs or astronomy, how about numerology? Then look at the symbolism, the omens of it. Look at the meanings behind them. Each symbol has a meaning, a hidden meaning that you got to delve into, represent. And if you focus on one at a time and just take it as far as you can, go on to the next and the next and the next, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I just did a 360, and so that's how this one is associated with this one. Wow, this is what it means, especially if you're doing the tree of life or the tree of death. This is what happens if you're doing necromancy or demonic evocations. This is what you're doing between a ritual and a ceremony. Wow, amazing how this is all wrapped into one. But it also goes to show you that there's a lot that goes into the practice. It's not something where you can just read a book and go, I'm an expert. No, it takes years. You're looking at 35 years as a Satanist. That's age 11 to about 7 years ago. About technically about 4 years ago. 4 to 7 years ago is when I started changing from Satanism into necromancy practices. And I love necromantic practices. I love being a necromancer. It's something that has benefited me personally. The knowledge, the wisdom, the associations where I'm free to work with any spirit, entity that I want to, that I'm connected to, that I want to work with, who's willing to work with me. That is something that is good. So when you get idiots who don't have a firm foundation underneath their belt, they don't have that understanding of signs and symbols, representations. How do you kill a dark djinn? Did you ever stop to think you're out of balance? Did you ever stop to think that it's about a lesson being put forth? No, you didn't. You just go with the Christianized thinking of going, hey, it's a djinn. It's a demon. Oh my God. I need an exorcist. I need to find a way to kill it, to banish it. How about you take the time to learn how to call it forth, to recognize its essence, its aura, to commune and befriend it and go, hey, so what's this lesson you're trying to teach me? What is it that you can teach me to better my own life, my own understanding? Because when you get further into the occult and you get further into your practices, you're going to separate from the childish behavior and you're going to start getting into actual practice and study. You're going to get away from the faucets, these fake faucets, if you will, of good and evil ideals. There is no good, there is no evil. There's only a balance. I work with demons. I choose to work with demons. I choose to work with spirits. I choose to work with the dead. But I work with the old ones as well. And I can tell you, they're not evil. Yeah, they may have darker shades of gray. But in the long run, my practices and my knowledge have increased. You got to remember it's about defining and redefining your practices and who you are. The alchemical practice of forming and forging yourself into the fires. You have to be the one to grow, to mature. So pay close attention to the signs and the omens. There is an actual book called, Protection, Signs, Protection, and Omens, I believe. It's by Jason Miller or Jason Augustus Newcomb? It's one of them. It's based off Hecate's work, Hecatean magics. So that's something for you to look into too. The Wheel of Hecate, I can tell you that I've practiced that. I've actually utilized that ritual for clients and some friends, and I can tell you that works perfectly for protection. But you have to understand the signs and the omens and stuff like that. So it comes in alphabets, it comes in runes, it comes in different elements. It comes in a lot of different factors. And if you are not versed in them, you're not going to have that understanding. So you have to delve into the works. All right. With that said, I've taken up enough airtime today. So have a good day. And I want to thank the Black Tower for jumping on here with me. I want to thank whoever else has been jumping on here with me, because I've been watching that go to from 1 to 3 people watching to 1 like and so forth. And if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe, hit that notification button. It's up to you. I'm not going to twist your arm. Um, I'm all about education. I'm for education, and I'm also a practitioner myself. So I've made it a lifestyle, and it's part of me as breathing is. So whatever you practice, always back it up with multiple sources, and make yourself available to the public. You're responsible for the things you do and say. All right. Have a good one. I'm out.